Hey everyone, welcome to another video. We will be getting into a more set routine of at least 2 videos daily, we hope. So bear with us as we express our thoughts and try to do this to the best of our ability. In this video, we'll be discussing our ideas about how our characters get powers in our stories, as well as our favorite powers and what they are, and what we would do with them.
Be sure to hit the thumbs up button if you like this video.
And please subscribe to show your support. Also ring that bell icon to be notified when we post another video.
Now let's begin.
Okay, so basically how we define our characters' powers are through normal archetypes, or generally how they get their source and their powers, where they get them from, is from either they are born dormant, this is what we call the chosen, or the elite. They're born with dormant supernatural powers given to them by Elyon, basically our universe's version of God, and it must be activated by an external source or by circumstance. Like if they're given speedster powers, speedster abilities, their power comes from the need to move fast to save a life or survive. Some are born with their abilities, but it manifests according to necessity. Basically, if there's energy surge within them, it spikes within them like adrenaline, and it causes their power to manifest because it was already within them.
Next would be the exohumans. These would be people who are given abilities through experimentation, scientifically speaking, at Pierce Tech or through a government entity. The Shadow Brotherhood as well. While their power is not on the same level as the elite, they are strong and oftentimes dangerous. They basically, this implies anyone who might have been replaced, like limbs. Their limbs are replaced through technology to make them stronger, faster,
or basically if sorcery or something is used to manipulate their genetics.
Yes. And then there's what was the other one, Theo?
Oh, there's also the demigods. For demigods, they're basically the offspring of the lesser gods, born with power similar to their parents. While they're not invincible, they are stronger than the world's strongest man. So whenever we created the characters or when we create deviant characters of, or derivative characters of Greek gods, Norse gods, or whatever, who are demigods, they're oftentimes depicted as seemingly stronger than pretty much any human or any being, but in reality, they're the elite or the chosen, or a lot more powerful, because their power is not measurable typically. Like, you have to measure it according to their the need, the necessity. Whereas demigods, it's very defined. You can tell how strong they are. They can lift a boulder. That's probably how much they can lift. But generally speaking, we don't try to limit our characters. So when it comes to our characters and developing demigods and all that, in comic book format, we try to maintain, I guess, it's hard to say. We try to keep them balanced, where basically the demigods are lesser than the chosen, and exohumans are basically like mutants, so it's kind of different. And then I guess what would be the next one?
Alien physiology, I think, would be the next one. Given that in our story there are aliens, a lot of them, and oftentimes they tend to have powers that are beyond human imagination. They're so different. It's all just because they were born with with genetics that are different than humans. They have, like, whether it be they're really strong, it's because the way their muscles work is just different from humans. The way their genetics work, it's different from humans.
And basically biophysiology and things like that. They are strong at times, and they use weapons and tools unique to their species. And sometimes even they will mutate themselves or experiment on themselves, or they've been experimented on. But more importantly,
it's more like a mix between like all the other ones. They're born with it, and it's a constant necessity to be born with it. When it comes to most aliens, they have a challenging world to deal with, so they have to generally evolve rapidly and as quickly as possible.
Yep.
So they are generally very different right from the get-go. They're very different.
And then, I guess, like, if you were going to write a role-play story, ethereal beings are beings who are born with godlike powers. So kind of like in a role-play, no one would play these roles in a story except for a GM.
So in our comic books, this means that they're rarely going to be shown, but these individuals, the ethereals, are basically like miracle workers. Their powers cannot be explained through any means. They are absurd and very, very powerful. They do sort of dwarf the concept of what the Chosen can do. And in some ways, the Chosen can outdo the Ethereals. But the Ethereals, generally speaking, are the top tier of when it comes to all the other archetypes.
Yep, and then you have the typical sorcerer, witches, warlocks, magic users generally. Most of them are humans. The Chosen can be corrupted and led down the path of sorcery and things like that. So
generally, the sorcerers and witches and magic users, all of them.
In our storylines, we try to keep them. We show that they are corrupt. By choosing sorcery, even if they have the best intentions, the fact is that it will automatically corrupt them over time or instantly. It depends on the choice that they make, the reason behind it, and also depends on the state of their heart. And that's how we try to write our stories. We're basically, if a person becomes a witch or a warlock, no matter what path they went down, whether they were the greatest person, like they could have been the most innocent individual, they can become as quickly corruptible or as corrupt as any other sorcerer or warlock, murderer. Doesn't matter. Magic has no, in our storylines, it has, basically it does not discriminate. It corrupts anyone who uses it.
And it can also work on any of the other archetypes. This specific archetype, sorcerers, witches, and warlocks, are designated under a single word. They are called the Fallen. This is why it goes for all the other archetypes. Is because if any of them allow themselves to be manipulated into utilizing magic and sorcery in our story, they are therefore known as the Fallen, because they have fallen from grace, from their own existence. They're
broken, and they can be saved. They can, if they let go of that power. And that's how we'll explore certain elements of the stories for some of our characters who have magical abilities. And they will never be born with magic. If they are one of the Chosen, they'll have power, but they are confused about where it comes from. And because they have no one to speak to about it, this power becomes something that they become selfish with it, or they start to seek alternate sources of information, and they eventually become corrupt by sorcery or led down a dark path. Generally it corrupts them. And so just like with power, absolute power corrupts. It happens. The others, it's not absolute power. When it comes to like the Chosen, they don't have absolute power. Their power is defined by according to basically the necessity of the situation. Basically the characters that we've written, when they are the Chosen, their power manifests according to the need, because they were meant for a purpose. If someone dies because they were supposed to escape, or because their power manifests in a more powerful way, more than likely the people who died in that manifestation was an accident. But it doesn't matter, because it happened on purpose. There was a reason for the death. And even then, it's hard to say how we'll write that story, because we have within us, any type of story that we write, there's supposed to be a beginning,
a middle,
and a twist. Yeah.
Sometimes it's an end. Sometimes it's a twist.
Yeah.
Sometimes we like to extend the character to make sure we can tell as much of the story as we can, because we like that character.
Yes.
Other times we end it because we know that that character has finished their story.
Yeah.
And going overboard, it tends to spoil the work.
It spoils the fun as well if you try to limit the character. So we try to keep the characters as flexible as possible, but we do not change the general guidelines of what their power is, their limitations, and we try to focus on basically their story. It's not about their gender, their race, their political leanings. It's about the purpose of being a hero. And so our characters and their powers, where they come from, are a staple in what we do in our character storylines. For one, a lot of the times the character's powers manifest because of basically the necessity. Whenever their powers manifest due to the necessity, it's not always because they're in danger. Sometimes it's because they're meant to help someone.
And they
And
sense that someone else is in danger,
yep,
so they have to go and save them. They feel the need to.
those are what we would refer to as the predestined, those who were aware to some degree that there is something special within them, but they don't know what it is until it manifests. And it's similar to like when you have a talent. Not everyone's talent manifests quickly, and so not all of them have where it manifests over time. It's kind of hard to tell when what your talent is, what your gift is, and whether or not you'll be able to utilize it when you need it. So with our characters, there will be some also who they somewhat have a feeling of what their gift is, what their power is, but basically it may not manifest when they want it to.
Kind of like whenever you're in a talent show and you want to, or not a talent show, but like in a race, and you know you're the fastest person in the race, and then suddenly you just perform inadequately. You're not as fast as everyone else. But when you're alone and no one's watching, you aren't doing it for fame or anything. You're just performing, and you end up outperforming anything that's reasonable. You end up running faster than any man alive, and this is without an audience.
It's just for some reason it's just how
it comes
works
and
sometimes.
goes.
Yes, it comes and goes. That's the best way to put it, because that's how we want our characters to be. They are, majority of them, human. And while we will have separate stories that focus on demigods or gorgons or whatever you want to call them, there's different types of beings that you'll deal with in our stories, and some of them are heroes, some of them are villains, and we never really want to write stories about like comic books focused on the villains. That's kind of been done. But when it comes to our characters and their powers, that's what we want to focus on and how they develop over time. We want people to be able to grow with our characters' stories. We want people to see how they mature over time, how their powers become more stable or more unstable depending on who they are. And basically, we just want people to see how we depict our characters' powers in a way that is fluid, a way that is entertaining. And personally, if we had to choose between any powers, I mean, for me, flight has always been the thing that's my favorite. I don't know why. It just has to do with, I guess, the freedom. If I had the power, any kind of superpower, it would be flight. What would yours be?
Mine, it's a bit of a tie between super strength or super speed. I would need super strength, but sometimes I need super speed. So I think I would probably have to go with super speed, just because it allows for more capacity to see other things that are different from far away that you couldn't normally do with, like, say if you had super strength, you couldn't see something that's like 10,000 miles away, whereas with super speed, you'll be there in an instant, and you get to see that.
Yep, and then you can rush right back to where you were. But then again, for me, the reason why I choose flight is because, not just because of the feeling of freedom, but there's the fact that for me, I'm constantly spraining my ankles. I seem to have the most weak ankles on earth. I mean, it's very strange. I've fallen from high places and never felt injured, and then suddenly, bam, I turn a corner around the door, and suddenly my ankle is twisted, sprained, and feeling like it's broken. Can't walk on it.
Achilles.
I have weak Achilles tendons or something. At this point, it's strange. If I had the power to fly, man, I'd be just levitating everywhere. I would just be floating all over the place. I would never walk. But then again, I'd be much fatter than I am right now. So, I mean, it has its downsides.
With super speed, I can go anywhere, be anywhere, and be back within a blink of an eye to do what I'm supposed to do.
Now, if I was going to have a typical power, something that is, I would say, a more of an enhancement than anything, I would say I would have a highly increased stamina so that I wouldn't get tired like so quickly. I'd be able to function at a very fast pace. Exercise would become more natural, easier to do, so that I wouldn't be as tired while I can continue to burn fat away and strengthen the muscles. What would you pick if you had to choose something, not really a power, but like
Not really a power?
an enhancement?
Yeah, you picked it already. Yeah, that's the one I picked too. Stamina.
Yeah, lose weight faster. I mean, you're still doing the
Or
work.
it kind of goes hand in hand with super speed, really.
Well, yeah, because the stamina and the because in order to have super speed, you would need increased stamina and focus, and you would have also an increased metabolism more than likely.
I think super speed covers that,
Yeah.
generally speaking. So
Yeah, he's got the best one. Flight, it's the lazy power. It's the power of laziness. So,
you can
yeah.
find anywhere. Anything could be your bed. You can just sleep in the air and be very comfortable.
When we utilize these type of things in our character storylines, there's not a lot of characters who can just fly, but there's a few.
The only ones who would typically do that in our story are the sorcerers or the ethereals.
Yeah,
The ethereals is because it's a natural thing. It's not just a blessing, but they are their power. Their power is them.
like
And the sorcerers, that's the same. It's that way. They are sorcery. So,
they're trying to look more powerful than they really are.
yeah.
And the best way to manifest that is through flight or levitation. And for some reason, I don't know why, that's just the typical thing. It's something that everyone writes or shows, but it works. And for us, I'd say the only hero that really uses flight naturally in our storylines would be Nexus. Granted, it's because he manipulates the graviton particles and atoms in his body so that he can control his gravitational pull, his density, and all that. So he's always a certain weight, almost weightless, but he's also not. Because he's controlling the atoms, he can kind of manipulate a gravitational field around him. And he's always the right weight, the right speed, and able to control the flow and direction of where he wants to go. And so he always has a sort of aura around him. And even when he doesn't, he can still levitate because he's manipulating the atoms in his body. He can fly. Whereas it's kind of convoluted. It's not really scientifically explainable. And
To be honest, none of our characters can really scientifically have their powers explained, except maybe the aliens.
yeah,
And even then,
It's
there
loose.
are some times when the aliens, the concept of their powers is just a little bit beyond.
and that's kind of typical. It's a comic book universe, and we hope to create one that's as convoluted and just entertaining as possible. We're trying to create one that's entertaining, but also hopeful. And so when it comes to our characters, we don't really care about how realistic they are. Ironically, because we've always liked certain realistic things. So it's kind of hard to say how we want to depict them. As long as, I would say, just wait until we release our first few panels to kind of get a feel for what our comic book characters are going to be like. We're working on a preview soon so that you can get a feel for our comic book universe. But yeah, we hope to continue to make more videos. Thank you for watching. Make sure to you subscribe like we asked.
And please click the thumbs up button for our video to grow.
And if you like
Our
our
channel
video,
will grow.
if you like our video,
If you like our video.
and please share it with your friends.
Yes, please share it.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.